So today we are talking about self-reflection. Of course, you guys know me. I'm actually streaming live now on my personal Facebook page. I'm Michael Lee. I'm here with my good friend Carl Leroy.
Hey.
Hey, yeah. So me and Carl, we spoke for a little while and thought, what can we speak about to really make a good impact? And we thought, why not speak about self-reflection? And I think this is something where we don't do much of because we live in a fast-paced world. But first of all, what is self-reflection? Self-reflection is more than just looking in the mirror. It's looking deep inside, observing, analyzing what's going on. Carl, what's your take on self-reflection?
Well, talking about, I'm a big lover of doing mirror work, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean looking in the mirror and kind of doing this. It's kind of complete, saying positive affirmations and resonating with it.
Mm,
But you said about looking in the mirror, and we look in the mirror most days, and we're quite familiar with what we see, whether we kind of like it or not. But how often do we kind of become familiar with what's inside, and
oof.
go within and kind of look at our inner
Mm,
selves in more detail?
yeah. Mm. For me, that's an interesting question because it's something we don't do much of. And what you can say, what's the point of self-reflection? And the idea behind it is that, like I said, it's analyzing observation on the actions that we have taken in order for us to grow. The way I look at it is that if we don't grow, then why are we living? It's pretty deep, but that's the whole purpose, that we have to constantly evolve as a person. Every single day we have to improve. The lockdown is a the lockdown is not great in terms of COVID-19, but the lockdown is great. That's a lot of things have been put on hold to allow us to reflect. So even if you are going to, I don't know, every weekend, for example, you're going to the nightclubs or you're going to dinner and that has to be stopped. What are you doing? Are you sitting down and just watching Netflix, or are you sitting down to reflect in terms of how you can improve as a person now that you have taken 5 months off? That's for me, it's just looking at COVID itself.
Mm. It's an interesting one, and as you said, if you're going out clubbing and doing all them
Mm.
kind of things, you don't necessarily give yourself the time to self-reflect. And if you are self-reflecting after, you're usually doing it with a bit of a headache.
No, no,
Um,
and you're right, Carl. Sorry to jump in there because a lot of people, I'm speaking in general here, because you have people who would work 9 to 5, live for the weekend, and then gear up towards the nighttime, and then get hammered, and then
as I say,
recovery
which
on
I don't
Sunday.
say.
Yeah, and then it repeats itself. And you think, when do you have time to self-reflect? And before you know it, it's 5 years later, and you think all you have is just photos on Instagram, but nothing to say that you truly grown. Yes, don't get me wrong, you had a good time, but are you further than you are now than before? And
It's in,
that's
it's
no, go
interesting.
on.
So much you said about having a good time, because we've all been there when we're younger, going out getting drunk, and that's fine. I get, well, depending on who you are, I guess it's fine or not fine, depending on what your views and values are around drinking and that kind of club culture. But it's a case of, do we do it to kind of get away from ourselves? And if we're
Mm,
constantly, again, looking at outer stimulants, going out, putting on the television, doing all these kind of things to get away from that inner voice, it's about time that we sit down and reflect on what it is that little voice is trying to say, and what is it we're trying to run away from.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are just keep looking forward to some degree and don't want to reflect, because there's so much truth behind it that they don't want to face it. So I think that's quite interesting to look at that way.
Reflection can be so multifaceted, as in
Mm,
anything. When you're working with energies and when you're working with emotions, it's so layered. um, and it means, looking at these things, it means so much to different people at different times.
yeah.
And you have to be in a space where you're allowing the information to come in. But if you're constantly busy, eventually you're going to have to make that time to sit down and evaluate yourself, especially if you've got families.
Mm,
You're taking the responsibility on your shoulder of you and your partner, and obviously your brood, your children. And I work with a lot of people who don't necessarily give themselves the time that's necessary in order for them to grow, and obviously, and sometimes their children as well. So I think becoming aware is key, and that's why my digital detoxes, I'm so passionate about them, because it gives time to people. So it allows people time to kind of reflect, you know, gain a bit of clarity, and then push for momentum in whatever given field that they're wanting to kind of pursue.
Love that. Even when I look at self-reflection itself, I remember a story that's been told by a coach called Rich Litvin, and he talks about when we move too fast in this fast-paced world, and that's what we tend to do, is just forward looking to some degree, not self-reflecting. And he said it's a bit like a small dog that runs into a kitchen, and he goes one direction. The dog runs in one direction, and then when you call it the other way, what it does is that it turns around and it tries to run as fast as it can. You see it's pausing up and down, but it's not going anywhere, if that makes sense. And that's where you have to slow down in order to speed up. And that's what he talks about. And the slowing down means reflecting, to see what we can learn from it in order for us to propel us into growth. Even when we look at, just want to dig a bit deeper with self-reflection now. Even when we look at the behaviors, our past behaviors, and we ask ourselves, why is it that we always act the same way? Why is it that why do we always act the same way in the past? Let's say when we're growing up, right? It's because one of the reasons why is because we don't actually self-reflect, understand that why we as an individual have acted that way. For example, if I look at the way when I was growing up in maybe the 20, when I was in the early 20s, I used to.
20s then, that's so funny. Like,
what's that?
I thought he was going to say in the 20s. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, but even in my early 20s, right, growing up, I remember I was meeting a lot of people, a lot of female friends, and I would treat them horribly, right? And it wasn't. I don't think that it was because I was a nasty person, but I would get a lot of high fives from my male friends because of it, and I actually wanted their approval, and I kept doing it, but never taking the time to say, "Hang on a second, why am I doing this? Why am I a hurt person?" Until and when I look back at it now, it's because I was in this toxic environment that where people would high five you for doing that, for breaking people's hearts, and it's not. When you think about it, it's not nice. So now moving forward, I can't see myself doing that to my wife, for example. It would kill me if someone did that to my daughter. So it's looking back now and think to yourself, so why do we act that particular way? And
sorry, Mike, I think talking about, you know, going on what you've just said, I think you can easily say that you've outgrown your level, or grown into a different level of awareness.
Yeah,
and you've outgrown that behavior because you've gained life experience. So when you said about, you know, doing the same thing over and over again, and the system kind of speeding us up, and what is needed is for us to just stop and go, hang on, let's just take a minute and self-reflect.
Of course.
The systems put in place, a lot of things put in place is there to stop us from thinking too deeply. And I'm not saying that you can't sit there and reflect, and you can't go on retreats, and you can't find Buddha, and you can't do all these things. But, you know, even at school, I was chatting to some girls the other day, and they in this restaurant, and their kids were like 15, 16, and they said that they're addicted to social media and they've never been off of it. You know, I gave them a card. Yeah. But it's interesting how there's a certain amount of people out there who want to raise awareness around the concept of slowing our minds down when the system is actually built on speeding us up. So yes, it's interesting you said about how you treated your exes, and was that thought processes going through, were they quite quick? Was it kind of you went on, was reactionary and you acted on impulse rather than thinking?
Yeah, I was definitely say it's impulse, and it was definitely what's the word, impulse, and also getting approval, validation, that's the word, from my friend to say, is this the right way of doing things? And as most of you guys know, I was seeking validation most of the time. And I thought maybe this is the right way, maybe this is allows me to be in their circle kind of thing. But as you grow older and you grow more wiser and you think, actually, this is not the right way. You know, this is not right. And what I've done over the last couple of years is that it's not just exes, it's other people that I've met and come across along the way. And I just felt that this is the way that they should be treated in order for me to elevate myself, but I'm not really elevating myself. It's just a perception, right? And what I've done is that even just looking back at it, the way what I've done is that I've picked up the phone and I've called them up and I've said to them, and it takes a lot of, for me, it takes a lot of courage to call someone up you haven't spoken for maybe, I don't know, 8 years or 10 years, or someone who's really pissed off at you the last time you spoke, right? But to reach out to them and pick up the phone and say, hey, I just want you to hear me out. And just to say that the person that treated you that way doesn't reflect the person that I am today. And I want to apologize for it. And you don't have to accept it. As long as you hear me out, I just want you to know about it. And what that allows me to do is kind of make peace with myself. And everyone handles it differently. Some people can say, okay, I've treated that person badly. Let me move away from it. That's fine. But I have this fear myself as well, where yes, it's kind of making peace with myself, but also the fact that if I go to the funeral, for example, and I hate that feeling when you say, I wish I could have said something to them. I wish I could tell them how sorry I am. But when you're self-reflecting and you understand this and you raise your awareness, you can bring it to your attention and you can say, okay, what are you going to do about this? Now that you know this, what are you going to do? Are you going to pick up the phone or are you going to move on? But whatever decision you make, you have to be okay with it. And everyone is different. And this is the way that I've handled it. Don't get me wrong. There are some people where it was really bad. And I said, okay, I'm going to be okay with it if we don't speak again. But most of them, I picked up the phone and made peace. Because sometimes you kind of reflect on it and you pick up on it and it can kill you even more. You think, oh my God, I'm a really bad person, for example, and you can beat yourself up. But you have to let go to some degree. And letting go could mean that making peace with yourself and you just be in the present and say, okay, I forgive myself. Or you pick up the phone and you call them.
When you make peace with yourself, I think that's a really cool thing, because then when you've made peace with yourself on that situation and you reflect on it again, or you look back on it, you can kind of look at it from a different perspective. And what's interesting is none of us are perfect, and you know, there are still people who are bitter about things that have happened 10 years ago, and it's like, I've moved on, you should. But remember that everyone's, as you said, everyone's different, and their level of self-awareness might not be what yours or mine is. And so you've got to kind of appreciate people for where they are, and the values that they kind of, or the views that they may be still holding about that situation, because you can't control other people, you can only control yourself. And yeah, I think that's important.
Definitely. And what I've said to people that are watching now, that are watching it live, feel free to ask questions, feel free to contribute, feel free to comment. We'd love to hear how you.
I can't see anybody, by the way. I've got a screen about this big. I can barely see Mike. I don't know. I'm literally doing this blind. And I don't know who's online. I have not got a clue.
That's
what be nice.
The last time I checked, which I saw 5 people online, I've told them that you can ask questions, contribute. We'd love to hear from you. This is not a two-way conversation. It's a group conversation. We're happy to lead it. So I've touched on where self-reflection and sometimes looking back could bring up just the horrible stories, i.e. the the way I've treated people. But you can also look back and draw strength from it. And drawing strength from this could also mean, if I look, for example, on the way that I set up my charity called Fundraise Vietnam, and I didn't know anything about it, and it's that passion that I had. Sometimes when you push yourself to a corner, you're kind of forced to react. And for me personally, when I look at myself and when times are tough, I look back at that moment and say to myself that I have the tools, I have the right tools, I have the right resources to get me where I want to go. So it can give you that strength to move forward. And that's just one example there with FFV, and then with the good one, and then also of course with the X's, which is the negative part, but also flipping it and turning it and learning from it. That's what growth is. Growth is all about learning. You have to learn from it. There's no, you hear people talking about failure. I failed. It's not really a failure if you learn from it. It's
not,
that.
yeah. It's not a failure. We had this conversation before. Do you remember? Failure
100%.
isn't. It's not a failure. It's a not yet. You know. And I don't like the word fail. And believe me, I felt like I've failed a million times in my life, haven't we all? But I guess it's just a little guide on a stepping stone on the direction you're going, and it's just a reminder that you're not quite there, and just to keep pushing in the direction that you want to go, to make sure that when you get there, it's appreciated and it's worth it. You know.
Carl, let me ask you a question. Have you ever self-reflected? Have you ever self-reflected and looked at the way, I guess, looking at your past, the way you grew up, your surroundings, and think back and go, oh my God, why did I act that way at first? And then realize that actually it is something that you want to share with the group.
God.
Throw you in the deep end.
This, I mean, do you know,
go for it.
My life has been hilarious, to say the least. It's been mad. I won't go into it on here, but ask my friends. I mean, it's been very bizarre, and I'm not one of these people who shares everything online. I might share the odd thing, but I realized that mass social media are completely conditioned. I take that back, sorry, because I don't want to offend anyone, but I think that when you put your whole life out on social media, you're leaving it out for judgment. And this leads me into talking about things that I've become aware of over the last few years, which is, you know, when we're on social media, especially in this day and age where we're out on show, where we want to give opinions, where we want to be seen, where we want to either make a change, or we just want to keep putting topless selfies. And of course, I'm so bored of it, Mike. I really am. But anyway, when you scroll through and you get wrapped up in other people's opinions and vibrations and the circus that is social media, you're actually feeling into things and having views and opinions that aren't even your own. And so we can, let's hate this person because everyone hates that person or that, you know, politician or whoever. And it's like, when you peel it back, they don't really know why they hate that person. It's just a viewpoint of someone else. And so I think that having a time off to reflect is great. But going back to your original question of what have I reflected on it? I'm always reflecting, Mike. And as someone whose brain goes at 1,000 miles an hour and got beautifully given a label called ADHD, which I don't actually own, it's interesting because I sometimes sit and reflect for hours to realize that I can't remember anything I was reflecting about. And other times, I can sit and reflect and connect dots and I have real breakthroughs. But again, for me, that depends on what's been going on in the day, what I've put in my body, what I'm eating, who I've talked to, what I've watched. It's all very relevant. But yeah, I was very, very ahead of my time when I was little, and the viewpoints that my teacher would have in class, I'd stand up and say, "Sit down, miss, you don't know what you're talking about." And I'd have a round of applause, and I would actually take the class, and she would just be like, because she
great
loved
school.
Me. She really respected my views and where they came from and what was going on. And so I guess if I didn't sit down and reflect on my values and my beliefs, then I would probably be completely lost. And there are times when I am completely lost. I mean, we're not perfect. I'm still on this journey. I'm just here to raise awareness and help other people, because especially now we're in a time with so much planned uncertainty that people need to go into their own heart space and work out what is true for them and what isn't.
Love that. Wow.
If that makes sense.
It does. So how do you normally self-reflect for everyone, just so everyone can?
How do people in the group, come on, put your questions in, guys? How do we self-reflect?
Yeah, I'm waiting for the questions to come through. But the way I tend to self-reflect is sometimes I'm in a bathtub, I'm lay there for maybe 40 minutes and just thinking about how the day went, for example. It could be when I meditate for maybe 10 minutes a day and just be in the present and then come out of it and just reflect about how the day went in the past. So there's many ways that I do it. I know people that when they're self-reflecting, they go for a walk, for example, around the park. So the common theme that you look about when you self-reflection is that it's quiet. There's no music, or maybe there's like, I don't know, maybe there's some. Basically, it's not pop or R&B or hip hop in it. That's what I mean. But maybe it's like soft music in the background that allows you to think through and see how the day's been. How do you reflect? How do you self-reflect, Carl?
I couldn't possibly tell you on camera, Mike.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, okay. You can tell me. You can tell me behind closed doors. Yeah. I'm not sure if I want to know, to be honest.
How do I reflect?
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. Growing up, I mean, I was a gymnast for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
I was a gymnast for a long time, and sports was my thing, and that really focused me. And when you're doing such dangerous moves, I used to get so scared. But it used to, I loved the way it focused me, because before the gym, after the gym, I'll be focused. But bringing it into now, go to the beach, walk through a park. I stand on my head quite a lot and do handstands and walk away. Yeah,
I've seen your handstand. Yeah, I've seen your handstand.
So
Yeah.
People will be like, "What are you doing, standing on my hands?" Because it might seem quite crazy, but a producer friend of mine, Paul, his wife is a Pilates yoga teacher.
Nice.
And I'll be singing in the house and just kind of come down to get some water, and she's in the doorway on her head. I'm like, oh my God. But you do really find your zen doing the most obscure things like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I love the fact that there is no like one way of self-reflecting. It's down to that person's preference. I love that. So thanks for sharing about that. Generally, when I self-reflect, there's a couple of things that comes to mind, and those are why, what, where, and how. And I encourage you, to think about it, because when you're self-reflecting, you're looking at what's happened in the past and what you can learn from it and take it to the future. So why is more, you can say, why did that happen? And you can say, where do I want it to go? And how do I get there? And if it's what, then you can say, well, what would I have done differently, for example? And I love those four things there. So it's why, what, how, and where. And I want to talk about something which I've never ever spoken about in terms of self-reflection, and this is what happens in that moment. So I'll share it with you, Carl, and with the other people. So about 10 years ago, so I'm based in London, right? About 10 years ago, and about 10 years ago, I went up north to stay with my friend. I stayed with my friend, and I didn't realize that this area here, they probably didn't see a lot of Orientals or Asians, you can call us. And there was a lot of racism, right? And I remember I was at my friend's shop. He has a nail shop. And as we came out, we left it. It was at 7 p.m. and we were walking back to the house, a 10-minute walk. And then as we were walking, there were a few guys. I think there were three guys that were like having racial abuse at us. And I stopped because I couldn't believe it, because I was in disbelief, right? And then my friend, he said to me, well, this is 10 years ago. This is 10 years ago, right? And well, it's still recent, yeah. But having said that, there's still a lot of racism today. And what happened was, my friend held me back, and he said, and he lives around the area. He goes, just leave it. And I was, my heart was pumping so badly. And I was walking home with him. I said, why do you want me to say something? And he said, this is normal around here. And he was like, are you just going to accept this as if this is okay, kind of thing, right? And then so that happened. And I remember maybe, I think it's a week later, and I was with my ex at the time, and then we were going to the train station, and she was going home. And as we were walking towards the train station, there were two guys there, and they started hurling racial abuse at us. I'm like, this is insane. I said to them, what did you say? I said to him, what did you say? And he said, he repeated it. And I said, oh my God, he is crazy, right? Because you got to bear in mind where I'm from. So I grew up in Tottenham, North London, and there's not.
You know that reputation Tottenham people have. Not like I've ever lived there.
Exactly. But it's more on the area that the environment that I grew up in was more on that we don't take no shit. If I'll be honest with you.
And it's reactionary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very reactionary. So it's like if someone pushed you and tested you, you have to do something. And I said to myself at that time, it's reactionary. And then I said, okay. So I said, okay, no worries. And there was two guys there, and I said, if I fight these guys right now, I'll probably get beaten up because they were quite big guys. So I said, sorry.
You got to choose your battles, my friend.
Well, this is the thing, right? So I said, okay. So I said to the two guys, stay here for 10 minutes, and I'll be right back. And I said to my ex at the time, just stay here. Don't let them go anywhere. And I just saw red, and I drove home as fast as I could. It was like a 3-4 minute drive. I drove home as fast as I could. Went to the kitchen. I picked something up, and then I put it in the car, and I drove back. And as I drove back, I said to my ex at that time, "Where are the two guys?" And she goes, "That they jumped on the train." And I guarantee you, if they were there, right, I wouldn't be here right now because it would have been a massacre. It would have massacred because at that time I saw red. So that wouldn't happen. I wasn't self-reflecting anything like that. It was like, this is it. And then from there, I was still staying in that city, and I still had a mentality that says that if anything happens again, racial abuse, someone's gonna die. It's either I'm gonna die or they're gonna die. And I'll stay there for maybe a couple of months. And this is my mentality there. It's just the way that I was from. I was around the people that acted this way, and this is me here. Now, looking back at that, I'm quite fortunate that I didn't meet them, because I would have been dead, or they would have been dead, or someone would have been in prison. I'll be brutally honest with you. So when I self-reflect, I look at that situation and I said, why did that happen? Why did that happen? Now, we know that we can't control people's behavior, but what we can control is the way we react. And at that point, there, I was reacting to what I knew. So having said that, I said to myself a couple of years ago, why did that happen? And I said, well, I can't. Well, of course, they think that racism is okay, but I reacted the way because of the people I'm around. You can call them toxic if you want, but it's just the way we live. And what could I have done differently? And what I could have done differently is just ignore them. I could ignore them. I could address them, but not react to the point where not react to the points where going back, right, and picking something from the kitchen and coming back towards those guys. And then another question was that, okay, so where do I want to go for it?
Mike, do you think within that situation, do you think, looking back, that you reacted how you did because you was A, hurt by what they said, or two, because your ego got in the way and you wanted to impress your friends?
I would say both.
Right.
And impressing my friends, definitely, because it's kind of what happened to Michael. Oh, someone's heard racial abuse at him. What did he do about it? Well, this is what he did to them. Do not do that to Michael. You see, he's not coming from. So there's something there, but it takes a bigger person to walk away from it and say, do you know what? If you've been raised that way, shame on you, and just shame that person. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's that kind of mentality that I had, and this is where I feel that self-reflection is important, because.
But 10 years on, Mike, and we're still living in a space of where, yeah, there's a lot of people, you know, questioning things and waking up, or whatever you want to call it, just questioning things in their own lives and taking their power back by self-reflection and by doing the inner work that is needed. But the system is creating, I mean, what's changed in 10 years? Kids are still going out reacting. People are still showing off in school. I mean, I was the biggest show off in school. I'll tell you a story in a minute. But it's like, you know, kids aren't taught meditation. Kids aren't taught to chill out. Kids are given shit food. Kids are watching shit on television, you know, shit conversation, low vibrational conversation, completely addicted to social media. So no wonder kids are just reacting. And, you know, if getting that angry is the only thing that makes them feel, what can we do? It's about raising our awareness of these things that are happening. It's not a coincidence that mental health is on the increase. It's not a coincidence that youth culture, gang cultures, rife at the moment. And what is that? It's very ego driven, and it's very kind of lower chakra stuff. And I just feel that we need to just, again, I'm not going to plug my course, but disconnect, get rid of all the bullshit and come back to ourselves, because, you know, you have grown as a person. You've become a coach. You've done all what you've done, Mike. I mean, it's admirable. It really is. It's beautiful to see. But wherever them people, are they still in the same space? I've got friends from 10 years ago who are in the same space they was in, because they feel they're victims of their own mind. And we've got to understand that our thoughts aren't necessarily ours. We are the space we are the space between our thoughts. And we need to raise awareness, because everything's just so reactionary. And you've got even adults in workspace who are constantly looking for the littlest things so they can then have an argument or blow something out of proportion and sue someone. And this culture that we've become is crazy, you know. And I talk to kids today, and in some aspects they're a lot more clued up than what they were 10 years ago. But they're living, God, how can I put it? They're also not as self-aware as they were 10 years ago, you know, because they're living their life constantly being bombarded with other people's views of what the world is. You know, we're constantly watching television, we're constantly listening to other people, we're constantly looking for likes, we're constantly, you know, sorry to sound negative, but looking outside of ourselves for validation. And it really doesn't matter. You know, everything is energy, and it really doesn't matter what other people think. It's about what, you know, where we are. And I just really feel that children or young people, they're the next generation who are kind of going to suffer with everything that's going on. And I think we just need to empower them, not by labeling them, not by creating this stuff, but by empowering them by genuine knowledge. But we don't read anymore. You know, kids are too obsessed with video games. Instead of really learning. You know, I said to my nephew the other day, I was like, you know, I gave him a tenner, really tight in it, because he helped me do the garden. And I just was like, oh, here's a tenner. But I said, you know, the whole point of doing this garden was because you wanted to do it, not because you thought you was going to get anything. And he kind of took that on board. But we teach our kids, if you do this, you're going to get this. If you don't do this, you're not getting this. So we teach our kids to lie about how they're feeling and to lie about their values. You know,
Carl, I'm just going to jump in here for a second. We have two comments. So the first one is from Long, and he says, failure depends on how you use it. It can consume some, and others can use it to empower and grow. So that's something that we spoke about 15 minutes ago. We're talking about anything that's, you know, negative or a loss, but you can turn it into something good in terms of growth. And then there's another comment here. It's a question actually from Kelvin, and he's asking, do you believe that you are the product of the environment you grew up in?
I used to, but not anymore. God, I said that a bit quick, didn't I? Can I have a think?
No, God.
I'm not. Again, do you know what, Mike? I'm sorry. Do you know what, Kelvin? Yes and no. Again, it depends on the individual, you know, and it depends on people's belief systems, because, you know, people say, oh, if you're a boy and you're brought up in a house of women, you're obviously going to turn out gay, which is crap. And if you're a product, I've got a dear friend of mine who was completely emotionally abused and beaten up and all these kind of things by his mother and his father. And he's the most softest, beautiful guy who's really together, who works, you know, with children. You know, he has his own not kindergarten, his own preschool. And he's an amazing guy. He does a lot of light work. You know, he's really clever. And so it's very stereotypical to say that if he was a product of his environment, he would have turned out like an abuser and been a bit of an arsehole like his parents. So again, I don't you can be a product of your environment, but again, it's awareness, isn't it? If we're all products of our environment, I mean, look at America. This is controversial, but it's the biggest social experiment that ever was. I won't go there, but again, are they products of their environment, or does awareness lift them out of that because they can kind of then look in? You know, we've all become a bit like that, but I guess being a product of your environment, yes and no. Because on some levels, yes, we are, and on other levels, no, we're not, depending on where our viewpoints are and what our awareness is. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That makes sense to me, and I agree with you. And I just want to chime in there. So an example would be, let's say, if your parents are alcoholic, or they take drugs, for example, and you have two kids. Let's say two kids. So I can't think of any names, but they say you have two kids, and let's say make it easy. What's that?
Two kids. They're called Bert and Ernie. You said you can think.
But Bert and Ernie, thank you. And let's say, for the sake of argument, they are alcoholics. Now, if they're a product of their environment, you would expect Bert and Ernie to be alcoholics when they grow up, right? But the way you can look at it is that, let's say Bert is the older kid, for example. It doesn't mean any difference. But let's say he follows in his father's footsteps, and every day when he grows up, he's an alcoholic, and he's like, and everyone's like, why are you drinking? Because my mom and dad are alcoholics. It's just the way I am. I'm surrounded by this, right? And then Ernie, on the other hand, could be the older kid, could be the younger kid. He may look at it from a different perspective. And like you said, Carl, it's about raising awareness. And what that means is that he's seen what alcohol has done to his parents. It's driven them down this hole where they can't look after their kids, they can't hold a job, kind of thing. They are like having income support or whatever, right? Well, basically, they're not really growing as a individual or a parent. And the way he looks at it now is that, I don't want to ever look at alcohol. I don't even want to consume alcohol because I know what damage it can do to me. And so that's the way that people can look at it. Like sometimes when you look at the environment, I don't know, let's look at where I grew up in, right? In Tottenham. And Kelvin can probably vouch for me here, because I think he's also from Tottenham at that time. Well, we used to hang around in Tottenham, and there's people that's going to be, you can say, well, the product of their own environment. You would expect living in Tottenham that everyone will be the same, right? But there's always going to be some people that will say, actually, I don't like this environment, and that would push me further and say
it's so structured, isn't it? With areas like that, well, areas like anywhere, I guess it's social structures.
Definitely. So it's the way that, like you said, Kat, is raising awareness. It's the way how you look at life and what lens you're looking at it from, and that would.
But no, sorry, I was just wanting to say before I forget, with regards to saying about, you know, if your parents are alcoholics and if your child will become an alcoholic or whatever, some behaviours they say are hereditary. If you're very 3D and third dimensional based, and your views or your knowledge, then you're gonna say that it's hereditary. You know, there's behaviour. If your mum's an alcoholic or got an addictive personality, you might have one. I know my mother was an addict. She was an alcoholic. I never met my biological mother, but I had traits, you know, growing up. But then spiritually, we'd say that it's karmic. So, you know, if there's things that aren't dealt with on your family, on your parents' line or their parents' line, it falls on your shoulders. And it's interesting because I was chatting to someone the other day, someone's son, saying the issues with the grandparent and the daughter, the issues with the grandparent and the son, the mother and the son weren't sorted out, and the issues there weren't sorted out. So now they've filtered into the grandchildren from the daughter and her child. So it's gone down, and I'm trying to explain that to the mother and the grandmother is proving very difficult. But the child is really starting to understand, okay, so I'm the one who can break this cycle, because he's now becoming aware of what he needs to do to change his state to make sure that he doesn't have the same shit happen to his kids.
100%. Yeah, definitely. And that's what it comes down to, raising awareness, looking at life from a different lens. And and you can be around a lot of drug addicts or alcohol people that are alcoholics as well, but that doesn't define who you are. And even And even, I just want to say this, that even if when you're growing up, that you do become an alcoholic, for example, or do take drugs, when you self-reflect, you will look at that and understand that why did that happen? Because maybe it's the people I'm around with. But the idea behind it is that you're looking forward now and say, okay, what learnings can I take from this? That maybe it's the people that I'm around. Maybe it's the area that I'm in. Maybe it's the, I don't know, it's your network. It could be many things, but it's down to you to ask those four questions: the why, the what's, the where, and the how. How do you get there to where you want to be?
How do we, with the why, what, where, and how? The thing is, how do we? Once you're in awareness and once you start the journey, great. But how do we get kids to start questioning? How do we get the masses to start? Because there'll be people watching this go, well, I haven't got a problem, and this isn't my problem. That's
of course, yes.
But we've all got things that we need to become self-aware of. So how can we? I mean, I've chatted to kids even last week. I was chatting to a couple of kids, and their level of self-awareness was worrying. Do you know what? Let me take that back. It wasn't worrying. It was interesting, because their viewpoints. When I won't go into what we were talking about, but a few of the conversations we had, their views were based upon other people's versions of their reality. It wasn't there. So I was keep bringing it back to, so what do you think? And they kept saying, well, I don't know. And so how can we kind of create a space where people can start asking themselves these questions? Because it doesn't seem like school is doing much on that front. I'm not...
So we know that the schools are not, you know, looking to self-reflection and looking back, for example. And I think it has to come from families. It needs to come from the home.
Really bad. Well, interesting.
Here's a different perspective, right? Because so here's a different perspective. A lot of the parents that I know, they expect their kid to learn everything from school, and it's their duty in the school to teach them everything, right? Which of course is ridiculous, because a lot of the values and the beliefs stems from their home, right? And this is something that you're touching on, is how can we raise awareness, and it needs to come from the house, right? You can't expect the school to do it. I don't know what their gender is, but that's how it is.
You know what? I find it fascinating how, in my opinion, you know, we've got kids giving birth to kids who are giving birth to kids, and so now you've got 3 generations of young people who you know, the father and the son, or the mother and the daughter.
I'm glad you brought this up.
Close in age in comparison, and have the same values and beliefs. And if you're having teenagers or young people having kids, for whatever reason, I might view them as the wrong reason.
Yes.
But, you know, it's not my opinion that matters. We're creating a place where there's, I don't know how to explain it. Sorry, I've lost my trail of thought.
I know what you're saying. So you're saying that there's parents, let's say there's 3 generations, right? And they're all acting the same way. Let's say, I don't know. So have this kind of the same behavior. So you can use an example. They have I don't know, giving birth at a young age, for example, kind of thing. And it's a moment, okay, how do you self-reflect? And there's no one in the family that's going to school or to college. And it's taken up. Someone has to break that cycle within there, and it has to be the I don't know, the 3rd generation or 4th generation to say, hang on a second, how do I stop this from happening? How do I not? I'm not sorry, Carl. I'm not saying that giving birth at a young age is a bad thing, but I'm saying that if people want to, let's say, focus on education and want to go to college and university and set the bar really high, then maybe there's some sacrifice that they have to make in order for them to get there. And
and it's not about instant gratification, and we're in a culture that is about gratification. And I think if you're of a certain age, you know, over 40, or even in your late 30s, you're seen as old school, and you're out of touch with reality. When the new school is all about, I mean, society's, you know, always been about appearance, but it's basing its values on things that are soft wired issues, you know, appearance. Why there's 20-year-olds getting their fish blown up like goldfish, their lips blown up like goldfish, Why are 16, 17-year-olds having Botox? But it's across, and it's acceptable now because that's in fashion and in pop culture, that's the norm. So, but what does that do? You know, you could argue that religion's ruined spirituality. I'm not having an opinion on that. It's whatever. But you know, when I'm talking about young people about spirituality, they go, oh, I don't trust religion, I don't like religion. And spirituality and religion are actually, in my opinion, quite different. So that's one thing. But then what's the alternative of that? And to do whatever spirituality does, which brings you into your own, go out and not concentrate and just be live wired into being reactionary, which is what's happening with so many young people at the moment. Is they're reacting and doing what they think they should be doing because someone else told them to do it and told them that's acceptable. And there's the social structure and values are being ripped apart. Deep, I know.
Definitely. Yeah, that is deep. And I just want to add something there as well. Even when I was giving an example of different generations, and I was like, I decided to look at my generation, for example, and just look at like my dad.
How old are you again?
I'm 35. So I look at my go on, what do you want to say, Carl? It's like you want to say something, but you're reluctant to say it.
You're a baby.
So when I look at my dad, who
look at my Facebook, I was born in 1914. Check
sorry?
it out, guys. You'll see.
What's that?
I was born in 1914.
1914.
Check my Facebook. I was born in 1914. Yeah.
I will check that out. So what I want to talk about is when we talk about self-reflection itself. It talk about generations. Is I look at my generation or the past generations. Look at my dad, my granddad, my great granddad, and you look at the jobs that they were doing, and you look at my dad, granddad, and great granddad, all fishermen, right? And yes, my dad came over here and started a new life, and that enabled me to do many things over here. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I had to do like a low-paid job, for example. I had to look back and say, how can I break the cycle? And that's why I'm doing so many things now. Yeah, and that's what self-reflection comes to you, because you have to raise the bar for the next generation, and that's what I look at it. So I'm doing many things. I'm doing like coaching, public speaking, the podcast. I'm going live with you. I'm setting the bar so high so that when my daughter sees it, she goes, "Crap! I need to work at that level," and I'm there to support her. And that's I want to be a good role model for her. And that's when you look at self-reflection, you kind of say, okay, what kind of role model? So this is the how. How do I get there? Or where do I want to go? And I've mapped that out, hence the reason why I'm showing up today to speak to you today, Carl, and to speak to everyone else. I know that we're looking at the time. Oh, just one more thing, Carl. There's a comment here from Kelvin. Yeah. Kelvin says, love for that, Michael. I ain't seen you since Edge snooker days. That's where we used to hang out. Love what you're doing. Keep it up, bro. Kelvin, thank you very much. We need to be in touch at some point. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm not sure where you are now, if it's still in London, Tottenham, but I'm pretty local anyways. We can work something out. It'd be great, man, to meet everyone up again.
In Tottenham.
Sorry? Did you?
It's a big Lidl in Tottenham.
Big what?
Is it Lidl?
Oh yeah, so it's by Lidl is by Tottenham/Edmonton.
One way roundabout, yeah.
Yeah.
We used to go to a pub,
so that's
JJ Moons. It's not down there. I don't know. It's on the one-way system, but near Seven Sisters.
I don't know JJ Moons. Yeah.
And me and my friend Laura, we as kids do, talking about being slightly delinquent. Sat in a trolley and she pushed me down Seven Sisters Road. It was great until we picked up speed and hit the curb and I went flying over a police.
Right. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Straight to the police station.
But you know what? These were the days when the police laughed and said, "You won't do that again, will you?"
Exactly.
You know. But now, you know, we you know, you've done that, you're arrested. You know.
Definitely.
So. Yeah.
So I'm just conscious of time. So we were speaking 15 minutes. So just my last message to you guys, and I just want to compare self-reflection with individuals versus businesses. So businesses that I've come across, or big companies that I worked in the past, what they tend to do is they look at how the last week has been been performing and how last month it's been performing, or how last year they've been performing, right? And it sounds like, oh, this is common sense, isn't it? Because a business needs to do it. But the reason why they're doing it is because they need or want to grow. They want to, a company exists, right, to generate profit. Like if we just use that as a base, just to generate profit. So how do you generate profit? And that is looking at how does last week's done, last month, last year, how does it compare? What are we expecting to happen in, I don't know, end of the year or beginning of the year or whatever it is. And that's what the company, and to that company, that's kind of like self-reflection. So if the company is done well last week, how can they double down on it? If a company has been doing, I don't know, not so well last week, then what can I learn from it? What do they do differently? What can I learn from it? And we look compare.
Mike,
go on.
Do you know what? That's interesting. I worked in a huge department store, actually all of them once upon a time. And worked for I worked for Tom 4 years ago.
Nice.
And our account targets were ridiculous. They went from 80 grand to 100 grand a month to 250 grand a month. This was like the following each month.
There you go.
To $500,000.
But why?
And their growth.
But why?
But it got greed. Personally, I thought it was great. But the
thing is, cut.
Listen, we were on the front line working our asses off, and we were like, it's going to be impossible to reach $500,000 to get that extra 1% commission or whatever it was, or double commission, but yet it was still pushed. And when you're in it, I guess it depends what business you're in, but I guess looking at logistics and stuff like that, it's important to evaluate and reflect on where you are and what your business has done in order for you to kind of progress and move forward. I guess the point is, if you have a dip for a few months, looking at why that's happened, and if you deem that a failure. I personally wouldn't, but again, it's down to the individual business. But I guess that's why I agree.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at businesses there, if we just use it at the bare basic and just say that it's there, a company exists there for profit. If they have reached, I don't know, 100,000, like you said, 200,000, then $500,000. That's fantastic. Just based on money itself. If profit is the goal, that's fantastic, right? And yes, there's a dip, and that the business will deem as bad, right? But then we compare that to an individual, and an individual itself. If an individual took time out and say, how did I get on yesterday? How did I get on last week? How did I get on last month or last year? How much growth has there been, right? And what do I need to do? Where do I want to go? How do I get there? For the next week or next month, or so on and so forth, right? And treat themselves as a business, just on that just on the self-reflection part, right? And then they're going to see massive growth, because you can say that a company has all this revenue or profit they've generated, and you look at self as an individual, right? And if we look at it in business terms, an individual, you can say individual has, I don't know, a share price, right? And if your share price is the same, let's say I'm worth £100, for example, and that's what I value, and that's based on growth, for example, right? And I maintain that, that's not really good for business itself, and that's not really good for me if I haven't grown. So how do I increase my share value? By growing. How do I grow? By reading, by listen to podcasts, but more importantly, it's knowledge. But more importantly, it's take those learnings from the past. Yeah,
working out your competition.
Yeah, but it's the self-reflection that's helped, because sometimes we so stagnant and we think, okay, why hasn't my share price as an individual, why hasn't it increased over the last couple of years? And I realize for the last couple of years we haven't really given it 100% to the job or to the business that we are working on, right? And it's the same with the business. Why hasn't the business generated enough revenue? Because they maybe haven't pushed so much, or maybe there are external factors that they can't control, i.e. competitors. But my point being here is that if a company did not look back in terms of self-reflection and looking at where we want to go, and they just kind of like steamrolling and looking ahead kind of thing, then what's going to happen is that they'll probably go bankrupt, because they're pushing so much money out there, not looking back on how much money they've made, for example. And it's the same with an individual. If a company goes bankrupt, then an individual would be a breakdown, for example, because you're driving so hard to the point that you're not taking time to self-reflect. Just take a moment, have a warm bath, take a walk, just stop. Like Rich Litvin says, sometimes you have to slow down in order to speed up. And this is a perfect example. So I just want to share that last thoughts with you, because I'm not saying that you are a business that you should be operating like a business, but I'm saying that if you want to increase your value, if you want to have true growth, then this is something that you have to look towards. How does a business grow from a small business that's a one-man operation to 1,000, or I don't know, 100,000, for example? What have they been doing? It's the same with the individual. How do you, as an individual, grow your business from one person to 2 people, or to 5 to 10? And that takes a lot of self-reflecting, meaning that you start your business, and along the way, you're going to make mistakes. But in order for you to ensure that you don't make the same mistakes, you have to self-reflect and go, hang on a second, that didn't work. Therefore, I'm going to do something differently. And as you tweak it and see and refine it, your company will grow. And yes, I'm talking like very basic here in terms of, yes, there will be other external factors. There's capital, there's competitors, there's legal, all that kind of stuff that gets involved. But if you just self-reflect based on personal or from business perspective, you'll grow much, but your growth will be much bigger than if you were to just, yeah, of course, it's action based, because there's a lot of, sorry, Carl, there's a lot of things where you learn from it. You look at your past and you go, okay, I get that, and that's an insight. But what are you going to do with this insight? Are you going to take action in order for you to grow, or are you going to sit on it and think, that's nice to know? Over to you, Carl. No, that's my message for today.
I think, thank you. It's beautiful. I think as an individual, you know, in whatever given circumstances you have, you know, I guess the myth is that if you're not achieving and you're not going out there playing full out, going full steam ahead, you know, getting your kids in the best this and doing the best this and getting in the best job, then you failed. And some people don't actually want that. Some people just want a peaceful life. And I think that that terminology and that what you've just said about business growth and marketing and stuff like that, it can be tailored to the individual, and you can look at it and in your own circumstance and take from that what you will. If you want to, you know, pursue the career of your choice, you've got to take action. So it's sitting there reflecting on what you need to do, however long that takes. And I'm great at procrastinating, guys.
I'm great at procrastinating.
I sit in my head, and then I'm like, great, okay. Love it. And then I'm like, right, the next thing, and my mind's gone. And then I beat myself up about, I'm too lazy, I'm not in the mood to do it, because I'm very, you know, again, it's about having structure in place, because I work on a when I feel to or when I'm inspired some of the time, rather than doing what our good friend Eve does, which is, right, she's up at 9, she's doing her shit every day, and she's doing it till 6 o'clock, and she's doing that 7 days a week. And I love that. But I think if we don't take action, if we sit and reflect and we don't take action, then you know, we need to take action. You know, to get anywhere, you need to take it, as I say, an element of action, and be okay with where you are, and give thanks for where you are, and have be abundant in giving yourself thank you. What's the word I'm looking for, Mike? Gratitude.
Gratitude.
Sorry, that's what I was going to say. And be grateful for where you are. And when you are grateful, and if you're constantly looking forward, going, oh, I want this, and I'm not happy because I haven't got this. Guess what? When you get it, you're going to be on the next thing, and you're not going to be happy.
Exactly.
If you get to a space in yourself where you're sitting there going, do you know what? I would like this, but I'm going to enjoy the journey, and this is what I need to do, and these are the actions I'm going to take. You can then measure your progress and feel empowered while you're doing that. You know, but it's got to be on your terms. You know, if you're constantly being guided by somebody else with their opinions and their outcomes, then you're not standing in your own power. And so I think it's very important for you to say, this is what I want, this is what I've reflected on, this is how I'm going to go and do it. And if you need to get help, go and get help. But be nice to yourself. You know, be kind to yourself. We're so overcritical and over analytical. And I'm so fed up with hearing young children as young as 9 saying, my mum told me I'm not well. My mum told me I'm
Mm.
ADHD. My mum told me that
Yeah.
I'm Asperger's. My mum told me I can't concentrate. What do you think, little one? Well, I don't think
Mm.
I've got a problem. I'm a bit hyper.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with that then. You know, we're constantly being led by other people's version of events. And I think we need to stop, take a minute, reevaluate what we want, do the
100%.
self-reflection, be nice to yourself, and then go and do what the fuck you got to do.
Exactly. Thank you. Carl, we hit 61 minutes. This talk was supposed to be 30
Really?
minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, we hit 61 minutes. But you know what, man? I'll be honest with you. I actually had fun with this, man. It was nice.
I know
It
you
was,
did, Mike. I've never seen you talk so much. Usually
yeah,
people
I
are
know,
telling
I
me,
know. I know, but I'm quite passionate about this because I want people to
no, good
win.
for you, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So thank you very much, Carl, for joining me today. Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I'm gonna upload it on YouTube because I think it's that good.
Please
Okay,
do send me. I'd love to see.
I will do.
How I fall over my words. I just lose my track so
No,
many
yeah,
times.
no, it's
Quite
good.
funny.
I had lots of fun. So on that note,
Fantastic.
guys, thank you very much. I hope you guys take something away from this. Feel free to get in touch with. Feel free to get in touch with me. If you want to get in touch with Carl Leroy, how did people get in touch with you?
So call me on. No, I'm just joking. My email is info@iamskybound.co.uk, and you'll find me on that website. Instagram is I am Skybound1 or Carl Leroy 13, or just drop me a DM. I'll be very happy to speak to you.
Exactly. And of course, you're my personal Facebook page. But if you want to check out my website, it's www.michaelleecoaching.com. That's Lee, L-E, the Vietnamese way. Cool. Let's wrap it up, guys. Yeah, don't do L-E-E. You'll find another Michael Lee. Yeah, find another Michael Lee. Okay, guys. Thank you very much.
There's only one Michael Lee.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.